You're unmuted, go right
All
ahead.
right. Good evening and welcome to our Title VI Parent Advisory Council meeting. As requirement of the Parent Advisory Council and the Title VI grant, we do have to hold a public hearing on an annual basis. So this meeting tonight will be serving as that annual meeting. So just our agenda for tonight, we are going to review the roles and purposes of our Title VI program. We're going to review some student data. We're going to look at a proposal for programming and our application for 2022-23, and we are going to look to approve our plan for our budget as we're moving forward. So just a few of the basic requirements of the Parent Advisory Council. And again, it's part of a formal grant that we're required to establish through Title VI, our Parent Advisory Committee, and then look at how do we look at as they advise our school and ourselves as the local education agency here. We also look through that we have an application for Title VI funds that we have to develop that application in open consultation with parents of Indian children, teachers, and when applicable, secondary students as well. Our grantee, which is the school district, has to obtain a parent committee written approval of our application, and also our parents of the committee do not have authority to review individual student eligibility forms or individual student information. So just kind of looking at some of those requirements of that Parent Advisory Council. Additionally, our parent committee meetings are open to the public. They're announced in advance. They're coordinated by the school district. Those meetings are normally communicated out through a Sky Alert system to our Title VI families, and also posted on our district website and our Title VI page within the district website. We also must provide results to parent committee in our annual public hearing, which we'll receive tonight. We have to review our application through our public hearing. Also provide opportunities for stakeholders to understand and offer recommendations. And then finally, this hearing has to be held prior to our application deadline for part 2 of our application, which our deadline is on May 13th. So the LEA, or the school district's responsibility here, is we are the administrators over the Title VI program and services. We employ and supervise all members of the staff. We are also the fiscal administration and handle all the funding. We maintain the records. We ensure that we've operated, and we evaluate our programs with input from the Parent Advisory Council, and we ensure that we have bylaws that consist of the intentions, policies of the district. And then the Parent Advisory Council, their responsibilities are to advise the school district. They look at conducting regular open meetings, which are currently being held on the second Wednesday of every month. Those meetings have been held virtually through this year. They also consult with the school district on development, operations, and evaluations of programs. They approve our application and major changes. They approve our program, and they abide by the bylaws that are created. So I've already introduced myself, but to introduce the other members of our Title VI Parent Advisory Council and our district staff here. So we'll start off with our district staff member.
Jamie Grewald, District Instructional Coach for Title VI. I work in all 4 buildings, been part of the Title VI program for a year and a half.
And then also we have 2 members of our Parent Advisory Council executive team here.
My name is Sophie Teller-Cloud, and I am the PAC chair.
And my name is Tracy Lobermeyer. I'm the Parent Advisory Committee vice chair.
Thank you. So the next portion of our annual meeting is to go ahead and share some of our annual data. So starting off is our enrollment of our students. So we are looking at, we're seeing a small increase in the number of our American Indian students that have been reported to the district. So as our enrollment in Shawano School District is declining, you can see our number of white students is also declining, but we are seeing a larger percentage of our students that are coming to us now that are representing our Native group here. And again, that's our 2021 enrollment. So also looking at our 506 forms, we are seeing a decline in those, but we have seen an uptick for the 21-22 school year. We're at 493 506 forms, and again, the 506 form is completed during our registration process for our students and families. Attendance trends at the Shawano School District. Our attendance rates over the course of the past several years are listed here. We're looking at our 5-year kind of rolling trend here. As you can see, our white students are staying pretty consistent in that 94 to 95.6% range. We are seeing a drop in attendance of our Native American students, about a 5% drop from the 2019-20 school year to the 2020-2021 school year.
Does that include all of the like virtual students as well?
That includes all of the student attendance from students that are enrolled within the district. Yep.
Okay. I mean, because that's kind of a big drop too.
It is.
I mean, it's been pretty consistent over the years.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's something to think about, you know.
So again, yeah, we'll have to take a look. I think if we continue to see it, if we come back next year with another 88% on there, that I think would be cause for some concern. Maybe we see a bounce back here as well with students being in person.
Could that be related to COVID,
It could.
the attendance rate?
Yes.
Yeah,
Because it was really high on the Menominee Reservation, so I'm thinking a lot of the students, at least from our area, could be not attending due to that.
Yep.
I think we would need next year's data to be able to compare that to say whether it was or not and go from there.
Okay.
Next is our graduation rate, and again, looking at seeing a steep decline in our 4-year graduation rate during the 2020-2021 school year. One thing I think that we would need to take a closer look at is how many students are we talking about as part of that as well. But we have seen a decrease from that 95%, that was our high. Our numbers are kind of coming back to that closer to that 2016-2017 rate. But we did see an increase in our 4-year graduation rate for our non-native students. So again, another data point that we need to take a look at the trends here after this year as well to see if that happened to just be a anomaly year or if this is a current trend that we're looking at.
Yeah, that's a pretty big drop in graduation rate.
The state also reports out a 6-year graduation rate, and that's looking at our students that possibly weren't graduation eligible at the 4-year, but continued on with programming and completed their graduation within the next 6 years. So we did see an increase in our number of students that have, looking at our 6-year graduation rate, going up from 88% to 90.3%. Again, looking at just a few cohorts, how do we compare against the state? So in 2021, our graduation rate for our native students was just below the state average. Our 5-year rate is much higher than the state average, where we're at 95.7. The state is at 88.2. Our 6-year graduation rate, again, above the state average, would be 94.7 versus 82.9. And then our 7-year graduation rate, again, students are allowed to complete graduation up to 3 years after their initial graduation date. So looking at our number of students who had completed over that time to be higher than the state average across the board. Next, we're starting to look at our state assessments. So looking at our students that are proficient or advanced and looking at each grade level. The Ford exam is administered to students in grades 3 through 8 in the areas of English, language, arts, and math. It's also administered in science and social studies in grades 4, 8, and 10. And then the other assessment that we have listed on here is the ACT. So the comparison that we have here is our overall district score compared to the state average. So again, where our non-native students are scoring below the state average, our native students are scoring above that Native American state average as well. These numbers here are numbers I would say in both of these categories are not where we would like to see them. Yes, it's great to be above the state average, but we want those numbers to be significantly higher. That's saying that only 16% of our students are proficient or advanced when it comes to the area of English language arts in the district. So math, it's even lower. We're just barely above the state average there as well. So again, areas of concern and areas to continue to keep focused on as we go through and work with our students here.
Yeah, I mean, because just looking at that alone is like, you know, the Native American students are even half as proficient as the white students who are not even at the state, you know, average. So that's pretty alarming. And I think over the years we've known that, you know, these areas are areas that we need to try to find a way, you know, to increase.
Yeah, we have to look for ways to increase all students, you know, so that we don't create a gap as we go through. Absolutely.
So we just keep that kind of stuff in mind for when we do vote on where the funds are used and for what.
ACT average score by ethnicity on the 2021 for the 2020-2021 school year. That's the most recent data that we have here. Again, looking at our Native students' average ACT score for ELA was a 15.1 and a 16.1 for math, and we're looking at these were our district scores of a 17.7 and 18.6. So the ACT again is that assessment given to all 11th grade students. Looking at some of the STAR assessment now is our district diagnostic assessment that is administered to students 3 times throughout the year. They get a fall, winter, and spring. And again, we are seeing kind of that same trend in our data. Again, looking at about that, you know, as you mentioned before, Tracy, about half is what we're looking at, half of the number of our students compared of our Native students versus our white students are being proficient on those assessments. So this is STAR for reading, and we report out by the students that have met the 60th percentile or higher. So again, that's our district benchmark on these different assessments. This is STAR for reading. Now we break it down for reading as well, looking at some different grade bands. So this is STAR for grades 2 through 5. And again, seeing our most recent assessment, we're at our white students were at about 40.5, and our Native students are at 19.7 that have met that 60th percentile. We also look at 6th through 8th grade. Again, kind of looking at that fall as that most, or I'm sorry, the winter of 2021, 22 score is at 26.1 versus 11.4. And then high school as well, much larger gap here as well, seeing some single digit scores.
Can you go back so that I can look at the grades again? I just want to tell.
So this is 6 through 8.
Yeah. It's about half. I mean half.
Just a little under, yep. Where 2 through 5 was, you know, just barely below half.
Right.
6 through 8 is just a little under, and now we're looking at about a quarter.
So it's clearly like middle and high school again, where, you know, we start to see those major gaps.
So that was STAR for reading, STAR for math for district as well. I think, you know, you would mention probably the same trend we see, the same gap. When we start breaking down by grade level again, you're seeing our students here, we've seen a significant improvement altogether, and we've seen some also that growth has occurred as well for both groups of students here as well, grades 2 through 5. From that fall of 2021 to winter, we can see, you know, quite a jump there, good improvement.
Which almost always happens because of the summer slide. I mean,
Yep.
in the fall when they test, it's not.
Yep.
They're coming right off the summer.
So we went from, if you look at comparison to last year, we went from 37.9 to 39 to 39. This year we went from 37 to 52.
Yeah.
So be great once we see that fall or that spring data as well to see hopefully that trend has stayed or increased even more. Grades 6 through 8. Again, we saw an increase from fall to winter, but we saw a decrease with our Native students, which does fall in line with what we saw in the 2021 fall to winter assessment as well, just not as large of a decline. And then our 9 to 11.
There's a pretty big drop.
That is a large drop.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, even though we see that trend happening, I think to us as parents, it's still alarming. I mean, it's still
I think one of the
something where it's like we're not seeing improvement.
One of the biggest things I think of too, where we've seen some of this changes in our data at the high school, is just the way we ran our schedule this year for first semester. Normally, students would have an A day and a B day, and we looked at it as quarter based. So it is possible that we could and I'm not saying this is the case for all of our students, but we could have had a good number of students that had math the first 9 weeks and then didn't have any math for the next 9 weeks, and then were provided the STAR assessment. So not an excuse, but it could have been a possibility or a reason for a drop here at the high school.
And I do know I don't know the exact numbers on this, but I know that this has happened where we have had a lot of, especially freshman students that are from our American Indian population of students that have come back to school now for the first time since the pandemic and really weren't in school when they were virtual. They weren't joining, they weren't there, so now they're back in school and they probably tested now for the first time in 2 years, but also haven't really been in school for 2 years. So I have a feeling that's part of the data that we're seeing here as well.
That would make sense.
It would make a lot of sense. We have quite a few freshmen, sophomore students that fall in that category.
Well, and I think where that leads, in my mind, I'm thinking too, we've heard with the district and some plans for, having virtual options and things like that be offered maybe a little more. And I think that it's something to think about for our Native students, because if that's an option and people are doing it, how are we going to make sure that they aren't having that big slide, or that they are attending, or that they are? So just something to think about, I think, because
If they weren't attending, they were told they needed to come back.
yeah,
That's why they're back now, but with the understanding that they haven't really participated in.
And in the virtual options, there are expectations now
Mhm.
moving forward
There
where we
are.
can hold a little bit more accountability.
Accountability.
Yep.
But during the pandemic, that wasn't the case. There wasn't a lot of.
So a lot of the data that we pulled for this is from Wise Public. Again, there's a opportunity if you ever want to look at additional data there, it is out there for people to take a look at. So now looking at the 2022-23 application for our Title VI, we're talking about some of the objectives of budget allocations, and then also how do we look at staffing our Title VI program moving forward. So the Title VI program has several objectives that we can look at as a district. These have been the objectives for the district for the Title VI program for many years here. So continuing this trend on of looking at increasing school readiness, increasing knowledge of culture, identity, and awareness, enhancing problem solving, increasing attendance, increasing academic achievement. We're looking to decrease the dropout rate, increase graduation rates, increase career readiness, college enrollment, parent participation, language instructional programs, at-risk student supports, and also increasing activities to prevent violence, suicide, and substance abuse. Additionally, we have data here from our 17-18 parent survey for spring. This survey was also administered this year and we will update this information. But the trends are coming in here of our top 5 areas that parents are looking at are cultural and traditional skills, specific activities, some hands-on opportunities for students, mentoring programs, tutoring, and field trips as well. Kind of those top 5 areas that are, when we survey the Title VI parents, what they're looking at for supports.
Did we have a survey?
It showed the same. Yes, we
Yeah.
do. We do have a survey out right now,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it did show the same trends for what parents were asking for. But we can add that additional information.
I think that
Yeah,
would
when
be
we share this out, we'll update this slide.
Okay.
So,
I just wasn't sure if the survey was complete, and that's why it's maybe not listed, but, like the recent one. Even if it matches, it'd be nice to have that updated.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So for looking back at allocations for the 2021-22 school year, we had an allocation of $120,154 based off of 475 506 student count. So a preliminary projection with 503 506 student count this year, we are looking at a preliminary budget of $121,720. Again, once our grant application is submitted, we will soon find out our allocation amount.
This slide shows the cultural activities that were implemented throughout the 21-22 school year, including the back to school bashes, family and community resource days, showcase of colors booth where we did fry bread and books. We did a rock your mocks day along with moccasin making class at the Shawano Community Middle School. There was programming provided at Olga Brenner, introducing the Making Camp 7 Generations math program, Thunder's Hair Read Aloud and braiding activity. Several powwow educational sessions were done in the primary and intermediate schools. There's been Three Sisters programming and recently a beading activity done by Jen Gauthier at both the Shawano Community High School and Shawano Community Middle School. We have recognized Orange Day, National Indigenous Peoples Day, Native American Heritage Month throughout the district. We had John Teller Sr. in providing programming for our third grade students over at Olga Brenner on a fur trade presentation. And we also are currently offering powwow singing and dance classes at Hillcrest and Olga Brenner, and a powwow singing and drumming class at the Shawano Community High School, as well as upcoming events for MMIW Day being presented at the Shawano Community High School tomorrow. So lots done in the last year.
Woodland Sky too.
Oh yes, and Woodland Sky is also coming. I forgot to put that on there. I knew I'd forget
And also
something.
our seniors.
Woodland Sky is coming May 19th and 20th to do a presentation for our entire school district for 4 different performances. And then we have our senior recognition coming up on May 20th as well.
So a lot of events happening this year under the cultural activity section, which again being the top priority from our parent survey as well. So also wanted to talk a little bit about our staffing that we had for the 21-22 school year. As Jamie mentioned this before, she is the instructional coach. She's half-time for Title VI as her role in the district and has another half of her position. We also had budgeted for a full-time paraprofessional at the high school to be shared between the high school and the middle school, and also between another full-time paraprofessional between Hillcrest and Olga Brenner. We did hire someone at Hillcrest and Olga Brenner and had that person in that position for the full year. We had numerous postings and interviews and offers, and we're not able to secure a long-term person for the high school, middle school position. So that position has gone unfilled for the majority of the 2021-22 school year. So for looking at 22, I got an extra 2 in there as well, so we'll change that as well. So looking at our title staffing moving forward, I'd like to propose, and I know this is probably something we'll have to vote on later, would be looking at shifting from the positions that we have with a instructional coach and then 2 paraprofessionals to start really looking at how do we kind of form that community between our tribes, our school, and then the also community as well. So proposing a position for each of our buildings called be a part-time tribal school community liaison position. These positions would be working 29.5 hours a week. And the main role would be working with our administration to support our students in our schools. Again, working with our administration on areas of attendance, again, cultural awareness for students, academic supports, some of those other pieces there as well, but really working between our building level administration to be another resource for our families, and really help somebody to help connect our families with our school and some of the resources that are available throughout the district. This is modeled after similar positions that have been offered in the Hayward School District is one that we talked about, and they've seen a lot of success with these positions and helping connect our students with a person within the building, and also being able to help connect our families with resources as well.
So they would not be paraprofessionals, they would not be utilized in other ways. I mean, I guess that's my thought. Like, historically, Title VI paras have been used in lunchrooms and sort of like classrooms that way. These individuals would not be.
They would not be in that. We had talked a little bit about like at the high school and the middle school where we have one set like enhancement or hawk time, intervention time. That person or these people might be available or probably would be available to have a 30-minute session where students, or a 40-minute session at the high school where students could come in and get some additional support. But these positions would really be focused in on providing the support for our students and making connections with students, not to be a recess person, not to be a lunchroom supervisor, not to be running copies or other things along that line as well.
And they would still have the classroom though, right? In the
We would
Title VI.
We would
room.
have a space for them in each of the buildings.
And
yeah.
the kids could like still go to the room and get support. 'Cause that's
During,
one thing.
during those enhancement periods, it would be most likely that time that we would have for sure, or there may be other times throughout the day that we would have available.
Okay, and that's kind of how it is now, right, too, Jamie, like with their Title VI?
If there were a paraprofessional at the middle school and the high school, yes, they would have more classroom hours available, but because we don't have that position filled at the moment,
Yeah.
it's down to when I have availability, so yes, it's usually just a couple enhancements a week that are open to them, where this person with 29 and a half hours a week in each building should be able to open up that classroom space a little bit more often and give regular hours where they would be available to students. And we'd have to figure that schedule out per building. It would look different in each building, especially going from the primary levels. I would envision that being more of them being a resource to the classroom teachers and pushing in for supports at both of the lower level schools, Hillcrest and Olga Brenner, where the middle school and the high school, I would see it more as a classroom space where students would be able to go and get supports. But we'd have to figure those schedules out based on the schedules for each school and what that looks like.
So who would be their boss or like their person that they would see? Like, would we still have like a liaison, like Kurt, would you still be?
Yeah, I would still be over the program as well, and be the person that LEAs for the district. And Jamie and I have had some conversations about, having her to have a small part to help to be a go-to person for them to get them started, to get them going in the right direction. A big portion of this would be our building principals as well, would be kind of that main contact for them within the building. So they will really be working hand in hand with the principals to, help problem solve for our students, look for opportunities that we can connect their families. Also be a person that's available to, be involved with any parent meeting that happens to have our Title VI students in it, to be in there, to be another voice, another support for our families as well.
So for instance, if we have Native students who have like IEPs and they have those annual IEP meetings, these people would potentially be like an advocate sort of for our
Absolutely,
Native
yep.
students. and
Students
their
with
families.
that might have a 504 plan, or
Mhm.
or even a student that we're having, maybe it's had a discipline concern and there's a parent meeting with that, and we want to have that person be in to say, here's some, yes, here are some additional resources that we might have available to help support the family, the student with any of these situations.
Yeah, and even academic support, so say that they're a student of concern because of grades or academic success is not there at the moment and they need some help with that. I would envision this person working alongside of teachers to help provide some supports.
One of the things Jamie and I have talked a little bit about too is how do we connect these people maybe on a monthly or bi-monthly basis with people in Hayward who've been doing this job for years and been able to possibly have that as another network for them to have somebody that they can reach out to problem solve for, to look for other possible situations as they're getting started with this.
Mhm. So these positions then would be part-time, so no benefits.
Yes.
I don't know if you had other slides
I
or
did
not,
not,
I don't
no.
want to go too far, but just to, I guess, get the gist of it. And then because they're employed obviously by the school district, there can't be tribal preference or Indian preference or anything for the hiring. But the PAC could be involved with,
Correct.
I
Yep.
think.
We would really look to the PAC to help us advertise these positions and promote these positions as another activity or another resource for our families.
And then one thing you said too, Kurt, that really stuck out to me, you didn't say it today, but we talked about it previously, was that if we hire these positions, it would actually give us more of a budget then, right?
Yes.
To work with, so we can continue to do the cultural programming, because I know that was like one of the areas that we wanted to talk about was how much is this gonna cost, and vice versa of hiring someone who is a paraprofessional versus a liaison.
So hiring hiring 4 liaisons, so 1 for each of our building, would actually be a cost reduction for us compared to our halftime instructional coach and 2 paras. So we would be looking at that. A majority of that would be, again, the benefits piece of it, but we can also create a different, maybe a little higher salary range than a traditional para position as well.
Yes.
That's nice too.
Yep.
Because I think too, like that's been sort of our struggle. Like we've seen positions remain open
Yep.
for quite some time. It could be just because of pay. I mean the benefits, which obviously for this they would not get benefits, but if the pay is a little higher, maybe that would help.
It gives us a little bit more flexibility.
So, and that takes us into kind of the budget proposal here as well. So, again, preliminary allocation of $121,720. Again, we are seeing a reduction of almost just under 10,000 in that salary portion together, the salary bucket altogether for these 4 positions. We were able to, again, with that reduction, increase our professional development budget, which was $1,500 last year. We're looking at $3,500 now to be able to provide some more opportunities for those 4 individuals to be able to attend some of the annual conferences that are available as well. We were also able to increase our cultural awareness budget as well. I believe that was $3,000 last year, doubling that. And then the remainder of the difference here, we looked at student success. And again, looking at increasing that student success, still with the graduation recognition, ACT prep, our college field trips, which our students have been attending right now. But then also because we saw some of the concerns when we were looking at the data of the academic pieces, putting the balance of our budget into some academic supports. And we've talked about a couple of different options. We didn't want to name anything at this time because I think we're still have offered some different programming this year and want to really see what the results are from them, from that benefit, from that programming before we actually decide on a position or a program or something to help support our students more academically. And then the last is just some general supplies there altogether. So that's kind of a rundown of our budget. We normally, for our annual meeting, would look at a time at this point to provide feedback to our attendees and then vote on the budget. We are going to table that discussion right now as we, or I should say as vote, as we don't have a quorum. And we will be communicating out to our PAC members on some alternative options to be able to go ahead and secure that vote that we need for the 2022-2023 budget. So at this time, I'm just going to see if there's any other questions or feedback from the attendees here.
I think as the chair, I'm new to this role, but I learned a lot this year about what our program can do for our kids. And really looking at that cultural piece, I'm a big advocate for that. I see that our graduation rates, our attendance rates are really low in comparison to our white students. And I just want to put it out there that, there are studies out there that show that when you do more cultural activities, it kind of like reverses those trauma effects with Native students. And we have to recognize and look that Native students learn differently from white students. We're more of a hands-on storytelling type of people. And so I really think that we need to emphasize and keep continuing doing what we're doing, with the cultural programs that we did this year. I think we need to really try to continue those on and make sure that we add that to our budget and make sure that we're really emphasizing that, because I really am a firm believer that these are going to help our Native students be successful in all areas. It's going to make them have that sense of belonging, create that independence, that generosity, all of those pieces of our Circle of Courage model. I mean, just referencing that model, I'm a big believer in that. So as the chair, that's just one comment I have. Looking at our cultural calendar, I want to say, that Jamie put together and put all those events on. It was a lot of work, but I think it was totally worth it. And if we can kind of plan ahead for next year and not try to condense everything right at the end of the year and have Jamie go crazy, because we wanted to put those on, but I think we should, spread them out a little more throughout the year and really make sure that we hit all of the schools. And so everyone, all the students are receiving benefits of Title VI.
And I think that's where another part, those, if we were to switch to liaison positions, having 4 individuals
Yes.
that can help support, or an individual at each building, would really help advertise those programs more and get more students involved.
That and we're moving into a stage now where we're not facing the pandemic like we were last year again. So we won't have to hold off on providing that programming because of having to follow those types of protocols. We finally allowed those things opened up for us at the end of the school year here, which allowed us to do all of these things at the end of the school year. But you're right, Sophie, they need to be spread out throughout the year, not all crammed in like we're doing this year, which is great. I'm glad we're getting them done,
Yes.
but we now have the opportunity to spread them out and have extra people hopefully to manage that.
And and Kurt kind of mentioned it too, but let's look at the impact, that these programs have had. One observation I noticed is that we had a huge amount of participants at the Hillcrest Polo dance class. My daughter goes to school there, Tracy is, baby's there, Shannon too, Crystal. I mean, there's so many of us on our Title VI PAC committee that have kids there. And I mean, I want to say, what do we have, 27 signed up? And it was an after school program. So, I mean, that was really cool to see. However, we're doing the Powwow singing class, and we're seeing, this is something we didn't foresee, that the attendance isn't as high because a lot of our kids can't come during the enhancement time. So maybe we need to look at possibly doing it after school.
Well, it's because of after school though, because they're all involved in extracurricular activities at this age. So that's why they're not able to come.
Right.
Because they're already leaving early for sports or track or
So I mean, maybe we'll look at doing something earlier in the day or
earlier in the year too, when spring sports aren't going.
When sports aren't going.
Yeah.
Or during lunch. I mean, let's keep that on our radar, and really ask our kids when is a good time for you? Because it's not, we don't want to discourage them from being in sports or joining things. We want them to be a part of our cultural classes, but when is a good time to do it?
I think enhancement typically had been ran during the middle of the day in past years. It's at the end of the day right now this year. So that's something we could look at in the future too, is if that enhancement hour changes, we could offer it during the middle of the day versus the end of the day. If that changes, that'll be up to administration to decide how that schedule looks next year. But that's how it ran this year.
And I like to see too how the singing class is being asked to help with other events like the senior recognition ceremony. I mean, I see that in their eyes, that makes them feel proud that they're being asked to do that. So if we can kind of do that more and have the high school singing class go do singing for the littler kids or something, really try to network out some of these cultural programs. I think it's really going to help.
And we're just spreading for that too. There's more and more kids asking me every week, can I still come? Can I still come? And I always say yes, absolutely. I'm not turning anybody away at this point.
Yeah.
And I was going to say too, I think that one of the hard things is being consistent with these activities and things that for at least a couple of years, if we can, to try to gauge, because we can't get a good sense of how is it impacting academics overall. If we go back to what Title VI in Indian education funding is there for, it's to increase academics and to make sure that our Native students are performing at the same levels as their counterparts. And so if we need to increase cultural visibility and awareness activities in order to create that trust, that that sense of belonging, that could eventually impact. We just have to kind of be consistent and try to offer some of the same things to see how that goes. We can already see that PAC involvement, parent involvement, having us at a lot of the events and things has increased, and you guys with the 506 forms we've seen a big jump in numbers, and that's pretty huge, and that shows that, the more we're out there talking to families, the more we're offering things that relates to our Native families, the more they're willing to get involved and are not, skeptical about what is this funding, what are these forms, why are you asking me for them,
I think we're closer to.
So I think that's a
15
positive
now.
that we've
I don't
definitely
know if we can
seen.
change that.
Um,
I think
Yeah.
our numbers are at 515.
Even more than what's
It
here.
keeps going up.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with these activities and things. I guess the hope is eventually to see those academics increase along with it. So,
Yeah.
I believe COVID did do some numbers to the numbers, but, and I believe, like Kurt said too, if we give it some time, we might see that as an anomaly because of COVID. But I do think we need to be proactive and think about what can we do then to support those Native families who fell off and didn't participate. There's reasons why, and there's got to be something we can do better as a district to make sure that that's not happening then. Other than saying, well, just come back to school,
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts. But yeah,
And just make sure we have money in our budget to support it, because we can't ask people to come in and teach these classes for free. You just can't. We have to compensate them, give them honorariums to teach, help coordinate these classes, like the singing and the dancing classes for sure. So as long as we have money in there, I don't know, Kurt, if we could go back to that budget slide, I just want to check quick. So like, could we pull money from student success? Like if we go over our $6,000 range? That's what I'm kind of wondering, because I don't know if we can add more to cultural awareness, because I feel like that's a huge part of increasing academics as well. I mean, I feel like it goes with it, hand in hand.
I think for sure we can probably pull that $800 out of the ACT prep, because if we're doing the pre-ACT, then we're not going to need the ACT prep anymore.
Yeah.
To hire the additional people that was used to come in and work specifically with our First Nations students. College field trips, that always depends. A lot of times we can pull money from there. That's the one place we can if we continue to get the Native Pathways grant. Then that pretty much replaces that amount of money, but we can't count on that money. So we always want to make sure we have money budgeted for their college field trips in case we don't receive the Native Pathways grant for whatever reason.
So again, this would be what we would be putting out as a budget. There is always an opportunity to revise
To reallocate.
and reallocate.
Oh, good, so
Yep.
we can,
Right,
Like
and
we
that's
did
what I
this
was
year.
gonna say. I think like some of the academic supports that maybe previously were thrown around, like some tutoring services that may, maybe that's something I think where the PAC should be looking at and advising. And if it doesn't seem like it's something that's going to benefit them the most, then we sort of reshift that to
the Saturday tutoring session.
That's what we want to find out. That's part of the academic
Yeah.
support piece that we want to know whether or not, we want to get some data to find out how many students are participating in that, what success rate that helped students catch up on their classes and succeed in some of their classes, and then look forward to, could we offer that on a annual basis, like a regular basis throughout the school year instead of just the end of the school year? Could we start it up right away after the first 4 weeks of school and get kids help right away and just make it an ongoing Saturday, maybe twice a month instead of doing 4 in a row? Maybe we can offer it twice a month next school year.
Yeah, something like that.
And compensate tutors that come in to help with that, or staffing through this Title VI funding.
Yes.
Now that I understand how to organize it,
Right.
it won't be as difficult to pass that knowledge on to someone and allow them to go with it.
And you know what, I would love to continue to do like the raffle prizes and like incentive gifts, but maybe, I don't know if we have money in our budget for that, but maybe we don't go as big.
Yeah, maybe it's a T-shirt or something like that.
Yeah,
We
I
can
do
talk more
think we
about
should
that.
have food though, I think if we can continue to feed them, you don't wanna study on an empty stomach, right? But just have something in there, especially Native people, we like to have food. It's a good, way to gather and join and.
I think we should take a look at the data from that, find out exactly how much that cost us per session, and then see whether or not it's been successful and how many students are signing up and whether or not that's addressed some of their academic needs.
And ask them too, like,
Mhm.
what do you want, what would help you be successful?
So a lot of great things done this year, a lot of things that we can look at and build on, and possibly, with not voting on a budget tonight, possibly talk about a couple of other maybe minor tweaks to it before we go for that budget. And said we'll be sharing out with the group, with the Parent Advisory Council here, opportunity to go ahead and approve that budget. But just wrap everything up, again, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for attending our annual meeting.